Hello, hello. Happy Thursday. It's hard to remember what day of the week it is, right? Parents, this is for you. If you're not a parent, you're welcome to stay on and join for the one day that you might become one. But today is specifically for parenting sexuality. We are talking about when and how to tell your kids about sex. So actually today's content is even more specifically for parents of anywhere from 0 to 10 years old. Basically because that's also what we're parenting right now. So I'm sharing some from our experiences, some from the research and study we've done, and just want to share with you and inspire you to know that you are the best people to talk to your kids about sex. They're going to hear about it some way, one way or another, and we believe at Moral Revolution that you are the best people to be talking to your children about sex. So today's topic is when and how to tell your kids about sex. So we will do some questions at the end, so I'll try not to get distracted by you sending questions in right now. Some of our team members are on and they'll post some of the points we talk about today, and they're going to post some of the questions at the end if you guys have any. So go ahead and send them in if you want. I'm going to do my best to not get distracted by them, and then we'll do some questions and answers at the end. But what would be fun is if you want to post, hi, I'm a mom or I'm a dad, and then what are your kids' ages? So for me, obviously I'm a mom, and my kids' ages, we have a birthday today, is my son's 6th birthday. So our ages are 4, 6, 8, and 9, and my 9-year-old turns 10 in 2 weeks. So it's about to be 4, 6, 8, 10, which is way easier to remember the even numbers. But we are having a birthday over here, and having small children. Actually, Cade, my son who's a birthday, today, he was the one who really inspired this conversation today, because I was like, oh man, I gotta tell other moms about this. I gotta tell other dads about this, because it's so important to talk to our kids about sex. So here's the funniest story. Actually, I gotta decide which story I'm gonna tell you first. This is the funniest story. I had to take my kids to the Dollar Tree the other day. Any other parents, their kids are obsessed. Like, they get $1 and it burns a hole in their pocket. They want to spend it right away. So there's actually a Dollar Tree right in the same plaza as our office is. So I take them to the Dollar Tree. I have all the kids. They're crazy running around. This is before, we were on shelter in place. And they're running all around. And then my son is like, I have to go to the bathroom. And it's always at the worst times. You're like, I'm in line waiting to check out. We're going to have to leave the line. I'm like, can you hold it? Can you hold it? So I'm like, okay, you can't. Where's the bathroom? And they're like, oh, our bathroom's out of order. And I'm like, no. The worst. It's the worst when you're like, do I put all this stuff back? Do I keep shopping? What do I do? And so I was like, wait, our office is right next door. We'll go to our bathroom. Just let's check out and go. So long story short, we go to our offices, go to the bathroom, and we have some chocolate we love to keep in the office for the kids, just so when they stop by, they can get a treat. And so we go in, we go to the bathroom, we get some chocolate. And then my son Cade sees books on my bookshelf in my office, which, there's lots of books, but he's like, why do you have kids' books here, Mom? I'm like, oh, you can take one home, go ahead. And so he takes it home, and the one he picks is this one, which we're going to talk about later. It's The Wonderful Way Babies Are Made. And it was hilarious because he takes it and I'm like, oh boy, he doesn't know how to read yet. He's 5. And I'm like, he'll just look at the pictures and we'll talk about it. Well, he had it and never asked about it for a couple of days. And then he came to me, he goes, Mom, the older brothers told me that the book from your office is about sex. Why would you have a book about sex in your office? I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go. I was like, well, first of all, Cade, I'm like, sex isn't a bad word. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And that's what mommy and daddy do. We teach people about sex. So all of the books on my shelf are about sex, buddy. He's like, oh. He's like, and it's not bad? I'm like, no. So point number 1 today is to creating a healthy sexual culture in your home as parents is to remind and make it known that sex is not a bad word. It's not a bad word. It is from God. It's from heaven. It's a good thing, and not to shame the word, because the word sex shouldn't have shame attached. Sex is sacred, but it's not shameful, and it's not supposed to be shamed in our homes. And so right away I was like, oh, but it's so fun. We get to talk about it. So then he's like, I want to talk about sex, Mom. I want to talk about sex. And I'm like thinking, oh, I should wait for Cole so we can do it together. He doesn't want to miss the moment. And so I'm like, okay, well, we need to wait till Dad gets home one night. We'll do it together. So he asks every night. He does not forget. He's relentless. Like, let's talk about sex, Mom. I want to talk about sex. And so finally we find a time where we can both talk about it. And it was actually when we were on shelter in place. This was just last week. So we were sitting in the backyard. Thankfully it was sunny, and we're just sitting outside, and we read the book to him. And it was amazing, you guys. My little 5-year-old just had the best time connecting with mom and dad, reading about sex and talking about it in such a it's really reading a kid's storybook, to where it's just like any other storybook you read to your kid, but it helps you, because a lot of times we find that this is why parents aren't talking about sex at home, is they don't know where to start. They don't know what's age appropriate. They don't know what's too early or not. But the power of first mention is huge. You are the best people to talk to your kids about sex, and they're going to hear it elsewhere. They're going to hear so many other messages that are distorted or perverted, or things that come on the TV, or, as they get older, friends who teach them other things. So it's so important that you have the first mention, that you get to establish yourself as the trusted experts in their life, because you are. So it's super important to say sex is not a bad word. So one more funny story about how sex is not a bad word from our home to yours is my older boys, who are now 8 and 9, when they were about 5 and 6, actually. Because my younger one was in kindergarten. My younger one loves to do shock and awe. So how can I stir people up? How can I make people get really shocked? And I just want to do something crazy. So he just does outrageous things. Anybody else have a kid like that? Send me a wave or send me a prayer, because hello, you know what it's like when you have kids who just want to go do something crazy all the time. So he was obsessed with finding out bad words. Okay, he was obsessed with finding out bad words, because he loved to say a bad word and see what people's faces would do and react and all of this stuff. And so he found out, I walk in on this conversation in my living room, and thankfully it was one of those moments, how normally your kids are doing something crazy and you go to get your phone to, remember it and record it, and you it's too late, you missed the moment. I didn't miss this moment, so I actually have this one on film. But I walk in the living room, and Connor is saying, sex, 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 trying so hard, trying desperately to annoy his older brother, because he just thinks this is going to irritate him and irk him. And so my then 6-year-old boy looks at Connor, Caleb, he goes, Connor, sex isn't a bad word. Sex is actually from God, and it's a good thing. Just some people in the world have misused it and made it seem yucky. And I'm like, oh my gosh, parenting win. We're doing something right. He knows that it's not bad. It's a good thing. And so Connor looks so perplexed, and, he didn't achieve his irking his older brother moment. And so he just is okay, looks kind of confused. Okay, it's not a bad thing. It's okay. But then Caleb, the older one, says, but Connor, when you're older, you're going to have girls that want to do it to you. I think he said, actually, when you're in high school, you're going to have girls that want to do it to you. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so Connor's reaction is, what? Why? Why would they want to do it to me? And he goes, because you're so handsome. Isn't that hilarious? I'm like, oh, the minds of a 5 and 6-year-old. So what I love that story is because it just establishes the reminder of sex isn't a bad word. And yes, my 6-year-old told us right, is some people in the world have misused it. Because the thing is daily they're bombarded. We are bombarded. Whether it's driving down your freeway and there's some big billboard, or a commercial that comes on TV, or songs on the radio that might seem innocent, and then you actually hear the words and you're like, oh man, that's not good. From their earliest years, our children are receiving so many different destructive and misleading messages about sex. And so it's so important that in the home that we are established and we are comfortable with being the ones who are talking to and teaching our kids about sex. A good question to ask yourself is, how did you learn about sex? Because a lot of us are like, man, I don't remember having a conversation or really any conversations. There's 3 different environments that, sometimes our homes can be when it comes to sexuality. There's the silent environment where it's really just not talked about. And so it leaves us wondering wow, well, the most important people in my life aren't talking about it, so it must not be that important. We don't want that to be our homes. We want our kids to know this is a home that it's safe and we can always talk about it. Another home environment would be a saturated home environment. And that would look like one where you're like, oh, nasty commercials come on the TV and they just are played, or we sing songs that have bad things. Or honestly, as you get older, we hear lots of story of, parents who give their children condoms on their birthday, or even provide their children with pornography and teach them to masturbate. Just really things that are totally perverse and destructive and just really broken worldly mindsets. But sometimes we are raised in those saturated type homes where we never learned about it in a healthy way. And then another home environment that we've seen is a conflicted home environment. And a lot of times we see this in Christian homes where we say, sex is good, but it's like, no, 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 no. And then we don't know how to just go like, yes, on our marriage day. And like, it was always dirty or yucky or bad, or we don't talk about it. And so any curiosity about it is shamed, or any questions are met with like a bad reaction. And so then it's like this conflicted thing of like, they say it's good, but everything I hear is bad. Or, they say it's good, but then they say like, complain about marriage and not having good sex or something. So it's just so important that we create intentional, healthy cultures in our home to talk to our kids about sex. And we have to totally get rid of the idea of having the talk one day. It's not just the talk one day. It's a series of conversations that start when they're as young as 5. I wish I had the time, but this is why we're doing this live, is to sit here and equip you and inform you. But I wish we had the time. We could just do story time where you could see it. But these resources and these books, it's understanding it at a 5-year-old level, and it's so beautiful. They actually even use the example of seeds, like planting a seed, how the daddy has a seed that gives to the mommy, and they use the sunflower as an example. Like sunflowers grow because a seed was planted. And so when we were taking the kids on a walk for science one day, since we're all homeschooling, high five to all the new homeschool parents out there, we decided on a nice day, we're like, let's go walk by a creek for science and teach them something outside just to get out of the house. And we had sunflower seeds actually that the kids were eating for lunch. And so he was like, I want to plant a seed just like daddy planted a seed in mommy to make me. And so it's so cool because they understand that it's God-given, God-designed, that sexuality is not something to be shamed, and it's something that we can constantly talk about. Now listen, my 5-year-old is like a little romantic. I didn't know those existed as kids. I was an only child and I was not like that. But he talks about a girl he has a crush on and he wants to get married one day, and he's such a romantic as a 5-year-old. Whereas my other older boys are both like, ew, don't talk about that, don't kiss. So what's funny is, my older boys, like if we kiss in front of them, like, ew, ew. And we're always like, it's so good that you have parents who love each other. But then my younger son and our youngest daughter will like clap and be like, kiss, 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 kiss her. So I understand that however many kids you have, which I saw some of you mention, you have multiple kids, all different ages and all different personalities, they're going to take to these conversations differently. So there have been times where I've sat down with my boys together and talked to them about things, but it's really special to have one-on-one time. So if you are a parent of multiples, I highly suggest you do like a one-on-one date. Or dates, for us right now, it's not like we can go on a date to a restaurant because no restaurants are allowed to be eaten in. But we just sat out by our pool, let the other kids play, and just knew, hey, we're having time with Cade right now and reading this special book together. And so just creating the space that is solely for them to process and not have an older sibling like, shame them or say, ew, you like that, or a younger sibling distract them, or, it's just great one-on-one time to have these conversations. So we talked about the point of sex is not a bad word, creating that in your home. The power of first mention. You want to be the one. So I know a lot of you are moms and dads of younger kids where you're like, man, my kid's only 5. I didn't think I had to worry about this till I was 16 or till they were 16. It's like, no. We have to talk about it. There's the statistics about kids finding pornography are through the roof. We're going to talk about that on another week. You can go look at on our feed and see the post. It's one of the weeks we'll talk about porn prevention in your home as parents. But the amount of people exposed to porn or just exposed to conversations or things happening at a young age is staggering. And so it's so important that you have the first mention and that you do not react, that you respond when they say things that you're like, oh, that's inappropriate. I remember the first time my oldest son came home from kindergarten and had said, he was trying to say the word sex, but he was saying six because he heard it at school. And so he was saying like six and something, and my husband's like, what are you trying to say, buddy? And so then when we realize it's sex, my first thing is like, oh my gosh, who's talking to my kids about sex? What happened to him? Did somebody touch him? Like that spiral does come. but then you just have to pause and be like, that doesn't make any sense. And my husband's great at this, is you just figure out what they know. Because we might jump to the conclusion of like all of the things I just said, or it's like, oh, he heard somebody talk about kissing. So he's like, oh, buddy, you're saying 6, but I think what you mean is sex. And he was like, yeah. And he's like, what? Well, what is sex? And he's like, it's like when people kiss, or like when they like hug and roll around. And so figuring out what they know and saying, hey, I want to talk to you about that. And also going at their comfort level. So being able to say, hey, I will answer any questions you have. Mom and dad are here for you. We're safe. Anything you hear at school or you just want to talk about and ask questions, we'll tell you as much as you want. So the other great thing my husband Cole has done with the boys is always, he keeps going and he says, do you want to know more? Because I can tell you more, but you might not want to know more right now, but I want to be the one to tell you. And so there's been lots of moments in these sexual conversations where my sons are like, no, that's good. I'm good. Stop. But they know they can come back to us and we'll continue to answer the questions. So it's so important that we respond rather than react in those moments. So even though you might have an internal reaction like I did of like, oh my gosh, what happened to him? I stay calm. I'm like, buddy, what's that? Tell me more. What do you think? Or we went to the mall one time and my son was with me and there was a man wearing makeup and he was so confused. Like, Mom, why is that boy like wearing makeup? And so rather than reacting or getting frustrated, I just respond. I'm like, I know, buddy, isn't that really confusing? And so I just walked him through how the enemy is using confusion because people, we don't know our identities of who we are in Christ. And you just take time to walk it through. Now, another piece of advice I have for moments like this, or maybe your kid does ask a question or you see something on their iPad that you're like, what? Oh my gosh. You want to react. Or if they come to you in a moment like that, where you're just totally taken by surprise, where you're like, oh man, I didn't expect to see like this man wearing makeup in front of my son and having to have this conversation right now. I'm actually already stressed thinking about all these other things I was doing. A really good piece of advice is to just pause and say, oh, wow, I really want to talk to you about that, but and it's actually a really special, important conversation. Can we have it later tonight or can we have it tomorrow? I won't forget. Or, you know, for me, I might say, if I forget, remind me, but you just can pause. You don't have to have all the answers. So when they ask you a question too, that you're like, I don't even know what to say to this. I have no idea. I'm not ready. Because we don't want to shy away and say, oh, I'm not ready. And then make our children feel unsafe with coming to us with those questions. Or we don't want them to feel shamed for asking a question. We don't want them to see our shock to think, oh, mom and dad are shocked and scared and confused, so maybe I should be too. So it's just really important to be like, oh, wow, that's a good question. I don't know exactly. I need to do some more research, or I need to think about it, or I need to talk to dad because we want to talk to you about this together. It's a big deal. So just feel the freedom to know. To not react doesn't mean, you know, you don't have the reaction. You can pause and just put it on later, but make sure you don't forget, because obviously I don't think you'll forget. It's a matter of not putting it off so long that they figure it out on our own. Especially as they get older, we want to show that we're their trusted resource, not the Google bar, because so many kids are finding out so much just awful stuff by just looking on Google because they don't have a trusted adult to talk to about it. So don't scold or shame them. Be ready to answer questions. And then the last thing I'm going to leave you with before we get to questions at the end are some of my favorite resources. So again, these are really simple points and then just my favorite resources. And again, these resources are from, actually, I'm going to share some all the way up to 16. So I'm focusing on toddlers and preparation from like that 5 to 10 age range. But all the way up to 16, I'm going to share a couple of resources for. So if you're watching and you're like busy cooking or cleaning or doing something right now and you're like, I can't write all this down, don't worry. We're going to post all of this in our stories after with swipe ups to go find these resources. But these are our favorites. So I already mentioned this book that we talked with our son through. It's called The Wonderful Way Babies Are Made by Larry Christensen. And it's actually a very simple like nighttime story that you can kind of just fit into your reading. And it has like small age appropriate rhyming story in it, but then in boxes, it has like more context. So you could just read the rhyming simple stuff to your like 4, 5, probably 3, 4, 5-year-old, any of that ages, and then up 6, 7, 8. They say specifically that the boxes are for over 8. I read most of the boxes to my 5-year-old because, well, now 6-year-old today. because I knew he could handle it. I looked at it. If anything, it just kind of made the book a little extra lengthy. But it even talks about marriage and how we're made. And oh yeah, here's the sunflower seed part explaining the seeds. That it's so beautiful. So this is a great resource. We'll share more about it. And then one of our favorites all time, and they actually just redesigned these and republished these last year, is called God's Design for Sex series. So it's a series of 4 books that literally will walk you through. It's like the best resource for parents, because here's the deal, and this is why I feel so passionate about it. It's worth coming on here and just sharing these resources, is as parents, we have so much. And right now as homeschooling, we're like, I have so much more. But actually just think of it like this. For all of us who are just jumping into homeschooling, you should be already your children's primary sex ed teacher, right? We do not, that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day, but the sex education that's happening in our schools is sometimes very confusing, very misinformed, very misleading at times. So it's so important that we are the ones already teaching our children about sex. So now you can just include it in your homeschool curriculum as their sex education. So this will break it down for you. It makes it easy when you're thinking, oh, I have to do all these things, teach my kids all these things. We're like, I don't know how to have this conversation. These resources are amazing. So I'm going to show you the whole series of what it looks like. Now, they just last year redesigned the covers, which is awesome, because when you see them, your kids might be like, oh, that looks old or outdated, especially as they get older. But they redesigned and just updated all of the books to make them very, very simple. I don't have the new ones on me, but you'll see it when you swipe up to see it. So the first book is The Story of Me, and this is the one that's for ages 3 to 5. So for those of you watching where you're like, oh my gosh, my kid's only 3, I don't need to do this. You should start. Now, I'm not shaming you into it, because my 4-year-old I haven't sat down and read this with yet. So it's not saying you're too late, but it's understanding and knowing that it's not too early. Like, you can share this book. This is, again, similar to that one. It's a child-friendly kids story book that walks them through what happened when mommy was in your tummy. How did that feel? Is that why I have a belly button? Like, it asks it from a kid's perspective. So this one is the first in the series for ages 3 to 5. It's beautiful. It's called The Story of Me. And then the second in the series is for ages 5 to 8, and it's called Before I Was Born. And so you can see how, this might look a little outdated. It's just a children's book, but the new covers are just very plain. And so it's Before I Was Born, ages 5 to 8. And this one goes a little bit more into body parts, another thing I forgot to mention earlier, and this will teach you this, but making sure that we are using the correct names and terms for our body parts. So though you maybe weren't raised like that and that feels awkward to you, it's so important that we call body parts for what they are. I have lots of funny stories about that. I won't share them all. But, my sons know it's like penis and vagina and breasts. We don't call it like wee-wee and hoo-ha and all of, the things. We call it the right body parts. Because what happens is when we call it that, it kind of almost brings this sense of shame. And there's no shame, it's private parts, which we'll get into. There's really good children's books that teach about that too. So there's more. It'll kind of explain this to you once you read into this. So book 1, ages 3 to 5. Book 2, Before I Was Born, for ages 5 to 8. For my sons my older sons, I hadn't read either of them to. I just sat down and read them both of these one day. I think I gave them $1 or something at the end of the day because they did not want to. Like, if you read this, I'll give you $1. Sorry, don't judge me for bribing. It was incentive, okay? But we just read both at the same time, and it was great. I will say even my younger son would love it all. My older sons are like, oh, I don't know, because they just get a little bit much where they're like, oh, that's too much. I don't want to know about girls yet. So that's fine. You can go at the rate of your child and feel the freedom to do that. And then the third set in the series is called What's the Big Deal? And that's for ages 8 to 11. So What's the Big Deal? Again, might look like an outdated Google photo. The new ones are great. Sorry, Facebook, 1 second. Okay, there we go, Instagram. It paused for a second, but hopefully we're all good. I don't have the last one because I don't have a 12-year-old yet, but the last book is called Facing the Facts, and that's for ages 12 to 16. And it says The Truth About Sex and You is the subtitle to that one. So God's Design for Sex series. It's written by Dr. Stan and Brenna Jones. Dr. Stan is a clinical psychologist. He was a psychology professor for 35 years. They've been married for 44 years. They're an amazing couple who invested, while they were raising their 3 children is when they originally wrote these 3 books, because they saw the need for making sure that we are teaching our children about sex and sexuality in the home. And their website, if you want to look them up for more resources, is christiansexed.com. So now that you are homeschooling your kids, christiansexed.com is the way to go. You can make sure that they know the truth before they go back to school. And then the next book I wanted to share, this has a junior version and a regular, like older kid version, is Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. This is the junior one for younger kids like mine. And this is just great teaching them. It's so important that we prepare our kids for seeing bad images. I know we would love to, I'll just actually say it like this. Don't parent from fear and don't parent from denial. Because yes, we could parent from fear where we're like, oh, they're going to see all these things, and we just spiral into the fear mode. But it's like, no. There is really bad stuff that is going to be in front of our kids, that our kids are going to face. But we don't have to parent from fear, but we also can't parent from denial of like, oh, my kids would never, or they would tell me, or they might not, because there's so many times where kids, the shame comes immediately, or an older kid, we know so many stories, because obviously this is what we do, of an older kid showing a neighbor, a cousin, somebody showing them or talking to them about something or teaching them about something and saying like, don't tell anybody because you'll get in trouble, or don't tell anybody or I'll hurt you, or I'll tell something. Like there's so many things that people use to just kind of silence people our children in these moments. So these books, just make sure that you're having the conversations with them, you're preparing them for it. Both of our older boys know about pornography. And another thing of fear would be like, oh, you're like exposing them to too much and da-da-da. No, they don't know anything about pornography except for there's pictures of naked people online. And they're like, what? Why would anybody ever do that? Which, how awesome is that? The power of first mention is of them understanding from their mom and dad that it exists. And when they see it, they can talk to us and we can work through it, and almost just like preparing them instead of them just hearing about it one day. So much more to say on that, but we got to keep rolling so that we don't stay on here for 4 hours, because you probably have kids you need to be tending to right now. But this one's great. It just talks about, we see pictures everywhere. We see pictures on billboards. What does private mean? It's a really, really good just children's book on Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior. It was written by the woman who founded Protect Young Minds, which we'll share more resources every week. We jump on here for parents, but Protect Young Minds is a great resource. And then there's an older version of this for your like preteen and teenagers of understanding it more. So if you're like, man, I have a 13-year-old at home right now, I would get the older version of Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. And then this is actually a newer book written by somebody in our community, and it's very similar thinking of Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, but it's good people. It's called Good People. I always in my head say good people, bad people. But it teaches the same concepts in a very children's book format of good people trust each other. They believe each other. They don't tell you not to tell anyone or keep it a secret. So just another children's book you can add to your kids' shelves and just have in your rotation of what you're reading to your kids. Good people don't make you keep secrets. Good people don't take you away from the group to touch you. Like, it's just really good books just to have in your conversations and what you're talking to your children about. This one's a little bit lengthier. But really good. I would say this one, I Said No. It's a kid-to-kid guide to keeping private parts private. So this, again, very important conversation that you're like, I don't really know how to say it, or I just said it once. Is that enough? Do I need to keep talking about it? This is just going to help you feel like, man, I feel equipped and empowered to talk to my kids, and now I feel like they know that they are equipped and empowered. So, yes, Kezia, I see you have a list. We're going to post a list after this because I know I'm sharing so many, but I'm really passionate about all of them. Because here's the thing, we don't often talk about sexuality or read to our kids about sexuality, but sexuality is something that leads to so much brokenness in, adult lives, but really so much of it starts at the child level and in children's ages. So this one's a bit lengthier that I would say don't read this in one sitting. But what's really good about it is it teaches I Said No, and it uses red flag, green flag. And so it kind of gets into their psyche of, oh, this is red flag, I need to walk away. Or this is red flag, I need to tell somebody this happened. Red flag or green flag. So this is a really good book just to teach them how to deal with people. Okay, let's see. Last children's book I'm going to share you. Thank you for sticking with us. I know this is a lot of resources, but I'm excited to have this video to be able to point people back to here's where you can find great resources parenting young kids. This also is a newer book, or at least newer to us. And this is actually about the sexuality, not necessarily private parts or pornography or how babies are made. This one is about gender confusion. Again, a whole nother conversation. Sorry, somebody said, where do we find it? We're going to post the swipe up links to all of these resources. And most of them are on our website, moralrevolution.com/parenting. I'll tell you more about that at the end. But this isn't about how babies are made or pornography. This book is about, it's called I Don't Have to Choose. So I Don't Have to Choose by Ellie Clip. And this book actually is in English and Spanish. They just printed it to where it would be used for both languages. So English is on top and Spanish is on the bottom. And what is beautiful about this book is it teaches children. It's just a sweet grandma who wrote this. She's an amazing woman. I've emailed with her. And she introduces Alex and Alex, but it's Alexander and Alexis. And it talks about how you don't have to choose what gender you are, or if you feel like a boy or a girl, it's what God made you. And it teaches you, like, even though, they both like to splash in the mud. They both like to climb trees like a monkey. So it's kind of breaking down those gender stereotypes of like, oh, well, you like to get muddy, you're a tomboy, or you like to play in the kitchen or with dolls. You're, whatever, the kind of things that kids are told in the stereotypes. It breaks it down to just say, you know what, we all like different things. We like to play with different things, but God decided and God chose who we are because it's in our DNA. Your whole body from your finger to your toes, this is the way God made me. So it's just a really, again, very simple, short book to just make sure our kids understand they don't have to choose. God chose for them. They're either a boy or a girl. Great, really simple book on the topic. So those are all the children's books. And then I wanted to just share 2 more resources with you, and then we'll get to questions. And these 2 are specifically for you as parents. So rather than just a book that you're going to read to your kids, this is a book for you. So the same people that wrote the God's Design for Sex series wrote a book for parents, and it's called How and When to Tell Your Kids About Sex by Dr. Stan and Brenna Jones. So we'll post that at the end. And then the last thing I want to tell you about is our Parenting Sexuality e-course. It is amazing. I can brag on it because my friend, and most of you know Havilah Cunnington, who used to run Moral Revolution, it was an e-course that she filmed before she moved on that we got to produce and put together. And it's a 6-week teaching for you and your husband or wife to go through, or if you're a single mom or dad, go through this. And it's 6 amazing teachings about how to create healthy sexual culture in your home. Then they have a Q&A panel. Then they have live interviews with Danny Silk, which he's an amazing teacher on all things parenting. And then we added about, 10 hot topic videos. Those videos are anything from porn prevention. What if my son or daughter is already looking at porn? What if my son or daughter is experiencing same-sex attraction? Discovering their identity, creating heart connection, parenting technology today. What if your kids discovered another kid's body parts? We actually have a marriage and family therapist who teaches that one. My child was sexually violated. What do I do now? Parenting as a step parent. Those are some of the hot topic videos, and they're amazing. So Parenting Sexuality is an e-course with 6 sessions that you watch, and then it has these bonus hot topic videos. So here's what I want to suggest to you. You're home more now than ever before. You are now your child's teacher. Let's teach them sex ed. So go ahead, instead of doing, 6 episodes of some of your favorite show with you and your husband, why not do 6 nights? You don't have to do them back to back. You can do them over time. But why not do 6 nights of watching Parenting Sexuality together to decide together how you're going to have these conversations, how you're going to create this culture in your home, and really to even talk more about it ourselves, because I know even just in marriage, sometimes we forget to talk about it. So we want to provide a discount. I know obviously finances, this is a crazy time for finances for so many of us. I don't know, many of us are not untouched by the financial strain we're in right now. So we just want to do a code of Let's Do It is the code that we're going to give you. And that gives you $20 off the Parenting Sexuality e-course. So there's a church price that I don't even remember how much that is. You can go look on our website. But for you as parents of bringing this content into your home, there's two prices, two packages. There's $59, and that gives you the e-course. And so that'll be down to $39. So we'll take 20 off, it'll be $39. Or the second one includes all of the Hot Topic videos. So you could just go buy one Hot Topic video. That's kind of the idea. If you're just like, this is my urgent need and I need help on it right now, just go purchase that. But if you want the whole e-course with all the Hot Topic videos, it's normally $99. And so with the discount code, let's do it right now, will be $79. So just taking $20 off both of those. So that is all I have prepared for you today, of just wanting you to feel equipped and inspired and empowered and blessed to create this culture in your home. Somebody's going to talk to your kids about sex. We believe you are the best people to do it. I know this is a time where some of us might just feel like we're surviving the season. Yesterday, I had a rough day of homeschooling and momming and needed a break. And I think we watched Toy Story at the end of the day just to I snuck a nap in during Toy Story. So I know this is a time of survival, and we're here every Thursday for we have 3 more Thursdays that we'll be here with you just to resource you, connect you, help you feel like you're thriving, not just surviving. And because we're home more now, we can have these conversations and have these special moments too. I know we've had so much more family time. We've played Monopoly, I think 5 billion times, and Uno. I mean, I'm like, somebody have other board game ideas for me? Send them my way, because we only have so many board games. But we're home more now than ever. We're creating amazing family time, memories that our kids, honestly, will probably, that's my prayer, is that our kids remember this season and this time as, yeah, I remember that. It was a time when mom and dad were both home more, and we did lots of dinners around the table, and we played lots of games together. Like, our kids can have that perspective rather than that of fear. We've chosen not to do the news and all that in front of the kids, and just making sure that the narrative and the culture in our homes is healthy, trusting God. We're doing daily prayer and worship. I totally suggest that before homeschool starts, we do 30 minutes of just prayer, worship. They get to pick their favorite worship song. We share our high at the end of the day, our low, our hope. What was your hope for tomorrow? What's your high and low from today? Just creating really, really amazing, healthy time. And we just want to, what we can do at Moral Revolution is resource you with healthy conversations about sexuality as a parent in your home. So thank you for tuning in this week. Next week is specifically for those of you that are raising teenagers in a hyper-sexualized culture. So we have Damian Giacchino with us next week as our guest. He's one of our speakers for Moral Revolution, and he's raised a teenage boy. I think his son is 18. He also has young children at home, so he's going to be able to cover all the spectrums, but specifically those teenage years that I haven't personally experienced yet. So don't forget to tune in next week. And if you have any questions right now, I'm going to wait about 4 to 5 minutes. If you guys want to post any questions that on specifically what we talked about today, I'd love to answer them. And then we're also going to provide you on our stories today with a conversation for you and your spouse. Again, if you're a single parent, you can kind of take a journal time, do these questions with you and the Lord, or even just like a parent or trusted friend or other single parent. But these questions it's going to be for you, your 10-minute sex ed talk. For you and your spouse, or you and another friend, to just talk through, man, how did I learn about sex in childhood? What do I want to do the same? What legacy do I want to continue in that realm? Or what do I want to change and make sure I do differently? And what is the next right thing for us? You can tell we've also watched Frozen 2 a lot in the home, but what is the next right thing? So I want you to feel like you can celebrate the wins of something you've done well in your home to make sure your children feel safe and informed around their healthy sexuality. But also, what's the next right thing? Should we get this book, or should we get that book, or should we sign up? Let's do that parenting sexuality e-course and spend our evenings. The sessions are only 30 minutes. I think it's like 20 to 25 minutes. So about the same time as one of those short shows that you watch on Netflix and you just keep playing. You can probably get through them all in one night. Let's do parenting sexuality together and just really spend this time to be intentional on creating the healthy culture in our home. So I feel great. There's no questions that have come in, so we're just going to wrap it up. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. You can totally share these videos, these lives on either Facebook or Instagram with your friends, with your spouse. They will be available for 24 more hours. So honestly, if I were you, I would sit down with my spouse tonight and be like, hey, let's just go watch this live together and decide what is our next right thing? What are we doing well? What do we want to do better? And just remember that you are the best people to be talking to your kids about sex. Thanks, y'all, and we'll see you next week.